Picture this. You're standing in a marketplace filled with opportunities. On one side, stalls are packed with safe, predictable goods: bread, rice, fruit. Everyone buys from these stalls because the risk of disappointment is low. You know what you're getting. On the other side, there's a small, quiet stand tucked into a corner. Few people walk toward it because what's on the table looks uncertain, unfamiliar, even strange. But here's the twist. If you take a chance on that little stall, you might discover something priceless, something that could change your fortune tenfold. That is the essence of asymmetry. The idea that sometimes the reward is so disproportionately large compared to the risk that it tilts the entire game in your favor, even if you lose more often than you win. Welcome to The Long Game. I'm Nathan, and today we're diving deep into one of the most transformative concepts you can adopt, not just in investing, but in every decision you make: the power of asymmetry. This concept is the hidden lever behind wealth, innovation, and even personal growth. It is the reason why some people, with the same hours in the day and the same resources, seem to pull far ahead, while others stay stuck on the treadmill of life. Now let's slow down and really feel what asymmetry means. It's not about eliminating risk. That's impossible. It's about shaping risk. Think about flipping a coin. If I tell you, heads, you lose $1, tails, you win $10. Suddenly the math changes everything. Even if you lost 3 times in a row, the fourth win not only covers every loss, it propels you forward. That's an asymmetric bet. The downside is capped, but the upside has room to explode. In fact, the only way to truly lose in such a game is to never play at all. Great investors understand this. Warren Buffett, for example, doesn't look for average opportunities. He looks for businesses with limited downside but uncapped potential. He calls them no-brainers. The best entrepreneurs do the same. Most startups fail, but the ones that succeed don't just win. They win so big that they pay for all the failures and still leave massive profits. Think about Jeff Bezos with Amazon. In the early days, investing in online retail looked crazy. The internet was young, unreliable, and full of scams. But Bezos saw asymmetry. If Amazon failed, the loss was limited. Investors would move on and the world wouldn't remember another failed .com. But if Amazon succeeded, the upside was unlimited. Today, it's a company worth over $1 trillion, reshaping global commerce. But here's the beautiful secret. Asymmetry isn't just for billionaires. It's all around us, hidden in plain sight. Read one book that sparks a life-changing idea. Suddenly, the return on those hours of reading is infinite. Send one email to the right mentor, and it could alter the trajectory of your career. Take one small risk to build a side project. It may fizzle, but it may also grow into an entirely new path of freedom. These are asymmetric bets. They don't cost much, but they can pay in unimaginable ways. The tragedy is, most people ignore these opportunities. Why? Because we're wired to fear loss more than we value gain. Psychologists call it loss aversion. Losing $1 hurts more than winning $1 feels good. So when faced with a choice where you might lose a little but stand to gain a lot, most people hesitate. They focus on the sting of potential loss rather than the vastness of possible reward. This is why training yourself to see asymmetry is like rewiring your brain. It forces you to evaluate decisions differently through a lens that asks, what is my worst-case scenario? And is it survivable? If yes, then suddenly the upside becomes irresistible. This mindset is liberating. It changes how you invest, how you work, how you live. Instead of chasing certainty, you start chasing potential. Instead of fearing failure, you start recognizing that small failures are just the admission fee for massive wins. And here's the kicker. You don't have to win often. You just need to win big once in a while. That's the compounding magic of asymmetric opportunities. So in this episode, here's where we're headed. In part 2, I'll take you through real-world stories of asymmetry, from venture capital investments that changed entire industries to small, personal decisions that reshaped lives in ways no one could predict. And in part 3, we'll talk about how you can apply this thinking to your own strategy, building a portfolio of not just financial bets, but life bets, designed so that your downside is manageable, but your upside is unlimited. Stay with me, because once you see the world through the lens of asymmetry, you'll never look at risk and opportunity the same way again. Let's bring this principle of asymmetry down from theory into the real world, because it's one thing to understand it in your head, and another to feel it through stories, examples, and the patterns of history. When you start looking, you'll see that some of the most transformative successes, whether in finance, technology, or personal lives, didn't come from playing it safe, but from stepping into bets where the upside so dramatically outweighed the downside that even repeated failure was worth the attempt. Take venture capital, for instance. Most people look at it and think, that's a crazy game. 9 out of 10 startups fail. And they're right. But the math of asymmetry makes it powerful. Imagine you invest in 10 companies. 9 go to zero. 1 turns into the next Airbnb or Uber. That single winner doesn't just cover your losses, it produces a return so massive that it makes the entire portfolio wildly profitable. This is how Silicon Valley works. Failure isn't just tolerated, it's expected. Because in a world of asymmetric bets, you don't need a high batting average. You just need to connect with the ball once in a while. And when you do, the home run changes everything. Let's talk about Amazon again, but from the perspective of its early investors. In the late 1990s, many people dismissed the idea of buying books online. It sounded niche, impractical, maybe even silly. But for those who saw the asymmetry, the picture was different. What's the downside? At worst, Amazon becomes another failed.com. You lose your investment, but you survive. What's the upside? The company transforms into a global infrastructure for commerce, cloud computing, streaming, logistics, you name it. That's exactly what happened. The investors who recognized the asymmetric bet became billionaires. And the lesson here is not that Amazon was obvious. It wasn't. The lesson was that the risk was capped, but the reward had no ceiling. Asymmetry also shows up in small personal decisions. Think about sending a cold email to someone you admire, a CEO, a thought leader, a writer whose work you respect. What's the downside? Maybe they don't reply. Maybe your email disappears into the void. You lose nothing but a few minutes of your time. But what's the upside? They respond. They take you under their wing. They open a door you never knew existed. That one reply can alter your entire career trajectory. That's an asymmetric bet you can make every single day, and yet most people never do because they're afraid of bothering someone or looking silly. They let the tiny downside blind them to the enormous upside. Here's another everyday example. Learning a new skill. Let's say you're curious about coding, or public speaking, or design. The downside? You spend a few hours practicing, maybe you never use it directly,
Maybe you feel awkward in the beginning. The cost is minimal. But the upside? That skill could become the bridge to a new career, a new income stream, or a new passion that enriches your life. The asymmetry is stunning. You risk so little, but you stand to gain an entire dimension of growth. This pattern repeats across history. Think about Christopher Columbus setting sail westward. The risk was real: storms, mutiny, the unknown. But the upside, if he was right, was access to trade routes, resources, and the reshaping of global maps. Or consider Alexander Fleming, the scientist who discovered penicillin. The downside of leaving a contaminated petri dish on his desk? A failed experiment, maybe some wasted time. The upside? The dawn of modern antibiotics, saving hundreds of millions of lives. Once you start seeing asymmetry, you realize it is everywhere. Progress itself is built on it. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds like gambling. Isn't chasing asymmetric bets just another word for risk-taking? Here's the difference. Gamblers take risks where the odds are stacked against them. Asymmetric thinkers look for risks where the odds may be uncertain, but the payoff, if it comes, is so outsized that it's worth the attempt. They don't bet the farm on every coin flip. They place small, calculated chips on opportunities where the math, the leverage, or the potential creates a lopsided game in their favor. That's why it's called intelligent risk-taking, not reckless gambling. Think about Elon Musk. When he started SpaceX, people thought he was insane. The downside? The company burns through his fortune, rockets explode, critics laugh, he goes broke. And in fact, rockets did explode, several times. But the upside? If he succeeded, he'd reduce the cost of space travel, win billion-dollar contracts, and position himself at the center of humanity's next great frontier. Today, SpaceX is not only profitable, but reshaping aerospace. That's asymmetry, risking limited downside for unthinkable upside. The challenge is that most people don't train themselves to look at life this way. We're conditioned to avoid risk, to stick with the comfortable, to protect what we have rather than reach for what could be. But if you want to play the long game, if you want to build wealth, impact, or mastery, you need to flip that mindset. The question isn't, what if I fail? The better question is, if I succeed, how big could this become? And is the cost of failing survivable? If the answer is yes, then the asymmetric bet is worth making. In Part 3, we'll bring all of this home. We'll talk about how you can deliberately design a life and strategy around asymmetric opportunities. We'll look at practical tools, how to recognize them, how to test them, and how to balance them so you're not just chasing lottery tickets, but building a portfolio of bets that over time bend the odds of success dramatically in your favor. Because the truth is, you don't need thousands of wins. You just need a few asymmetric ones, and they can change everything.
Now that we've explored what asymmetry looks like in theory and seen how it shows up in real-world stories, let's talk about how you can actually apply this principle to your own strategy, whether in investing, career, relationships, or personal growth. Because the beauty of asymmetry isn't just in recognizing it after the fact. The true power comes when you deliberately design your life around asymmetric opportunities, stacking them over time so that you tilt the game of life in your favor. First, start by asking the right question. What's my worst-case scenario? This single question is a compass for asymmetric thinking. If the worst-case outcome is survivable,
meaning you might feel embarrassed, you might lose some money, you might waste some time, but you'll live to fight another day, then the bet is worth serious consideration. Asymmetry only works if your downside doesn't destroy you. That's why seasoned investors never bet the farm, never put all their chips on one spin of the wheel. Instead, they place multiple small bets, knowing most may fail, but the ones that work will deliver life-changing upside. Second, cultivate what I call optionality. Optionality means building a portfolio of opportunities that may or may not pay off, but cost you very little to keep alive. Think about it like planting seeds. Some will never sprout, some will grow into small plants, and a few will become towering trees that bear fruit for decades. Optionality in practice might mean maintaining side projects, keeping a network of people across different industries, learning new skills that may not have an immediate payoff, or investing small amounts in emerging areas. You don't need them all to succeed. You just need a few. That's the asymmetry of options. You cap your cost, but your upside remains open. Third, build systems to capture upside when it arrives. Here's the truth. Asymmetric opportunities don't last forever. When they appear, you need to be ready. That means keeping dry powder, resources you can deploy quickly. It means building habits that prepare you for the moment. It means positioning yourself so that you can say yes when opportunity knocks, instead of being locked into obligations or paralyzed by fear. One of the greatest tragedies I see is when people actually stumble upon an asymmetric opportunity but can't take advantage of it because they're overextended, distracted, or trapped in commitments. The long game requires patience, but also readiness. Fourth, embrace the math of many small failures. If you're going to play this game, you have to get comfortable losing often. And this is where most people fall off. They hate losing. They want every decision to pay off. But that's not how asymmetry works. Remember, you don't need to be right often. You just need to be right big occasionally. So reframe failure. Every small loss is the cost of admission, the tuition you pay for a shot at the one big win. And the moment you accept that, you free yourself from the paralysis that stops most people from acting at all. Fifth, learn to recognize the signals of asymmetric potential. What do these opportunities look like? They often share certain qualities. The cost of entry is low compared to the possible reward. They involve hidden leverage, like technology, networks, or compounding, that can multiply your effort. They are ignored or dismissed by the majority, which means less competition, and they are uncertain, not because they are impossible, but because their true potential hasn't been proven yet. For example, buying Bitcoin in 2010 was an asymmetric bet. Downside, a few $100s gone. Upside, generational wealth. Starting a YouTube channel might seem trivial. Downside, some time spent, maybe a bruised ego. Upside, a platform that creates influence, income, and opportunity far beyond your day job. These are the types of patterns you can train your eye to spot. Sixth, align asymmetry with your strengths. Not every asymmetric bet is worth your time. If you hate numbers, trying to find asymmetric opportunities in high-frequency trading is probably not your path. But if you love writing, asymmetric upside may lie in publishing, storytelling, or building an audience. The key is to place bets where your natural advantages increase the odds of capturing the upside. That way, even though the game is still risky, you've tilted the table just a little more in your favor. Seventh, remember that asymmetry compounds. This is where the real magic lies. One asymmetric win can create resources, money, time, connections, that position you for the next asymmetric bet, and the next, and the next. It's a snowball effect. A small win today becomes the capital that funds a larger risk tomorrow. And over years or decades, that layering of asymmetric wins produces results that look impossible to outsiders. People will say you're lucky, but in reality, you simply built a system where luck had no choice but to find you. So finally, and perhaps most importantly, bring asymmetry into how you think about life, not just money. Asymmetric bets in relationships, like choosing to invest deeply in one friendship that later leads to opportunities you could never plan. Asymmetric bets in health, like adopting one habit of daily exercise that prevents decades of disease. Asymmetric bets in learning, like reading one book that sparks an idea changing the course of your career. These are small, survivable costs with potentially infinite upside. They are the quiet multipliers that compound into a life well lived. So as we wrap this conversation, let me leave you with this. The long game isn't about avoiding risk. It's about choosing the right kind of risk. It's about training yourself to spot the bets where the downside is survivable, but the upside is life-changing. Do this consistently, and you don't need to win every time. You just need to win big once in a while. And that is enough to transform not only your finances, but your destiny. Because at the end of the day, the people who thrive in life are not the ones who never lose. They are the ones who place themselves again and again in positions where, if things go right, they go really right. And when you play the long game with asymmetry on your side, time itself becomes your ally, amplifying every upside you capture until the results look inevitable. So ask yourself this week, what small bet can I make where the cost is minimal, but the upside could be enormous? That question, asked repeatedly over a lifetime, may just be the most powerful question of all.